I suspect you may have seen my video from yesterday, but you know of the YouTube's new terms of service, and you know my issues and others. Is YouTube working themselves into a massive either class action or multiple lawsuits for deceitful business practices and unjust enrichment?
They still think they're immune under Section 230. So because they haven't been successfully hit with that kind of claim yet, they really think that one, they can unilaterally. Isn't it nice when you can just unilaterally change your contract overnight? Wouldn't we all like to have that? You know, that kind of privilege that YouTube appears to usurp. But they clearly believe that Section 230 allows them to do whatever they want, and until either Congress changes it or the courts take corrective action, so far to date they've been proven right over the last 2 decades. So that's really the hurdle, is that they seem to be too big to be sued.
And we've talked about this multiple times, and we've been actually having these live streams for long enough that we've seen the jurisprudential evolution, that people were going after YouTube and Google on the basis of constitutional First Amendment violations. We may have thought it was promising at one point in time, but it's proven to be not fruitful. The next is going to be going after them either based on their contract with their users or some form of common law tort, I would imagine. The unjust enrichment, just so everybody appreciates this, they're making money by advertising off of content that people have either not wanted to monetize for whatever the reason, because they don't want ads running, or that YouTube might have said is not appropriate for you to monetize, but we can do it. I mean, if you refresh everybody's memory as to what the criteria for unjust enrichment are typically.
That somebody gets something that they don't deserve. I mean, that's the simple answer. Legally, it's that by some mechanism that's tortious, they have obtained a benefit by some inequitable means. And this goes all the way back to England. In the old days, there was the courts of law, and then you could appeal to the king's conscience. And the king's conscience was equity courts. That's where equity courts originated. They were courts that you could, well, the law is too harsh and the remedy's not fair and the remedy's not just. So I appeal to the king's conscience to change the circumstance or situation. And that's what allowed, in fact, that's where a lot of trust originated, and split title. You could have legal title, courts of law governed, equitable title that the chancellors governed through the king's conscience. And that's where a lot of that originated. And unjust enrichment is an old equitable principle. So it's not in a statute. It's not civil law. It's not a common law tort. It is more of where equity law developed a area of jurisprudence to say when something's happened that really shouldn't, we should step in and take action. And that's what unjust enrichment is. Now, there's unclean hands and latches and all that jazz that goes in with it about whether you can claim equity or not as a remedy. In places like Tennessee, the courts are actually separate. You still have chancery courts that are equity courts and circuit courts that do civil law courts. Now, sometimes the civil law courts can have both equitable and legal jurisdiction. Often the chancery courts only have equitable jurisdiction, though that too can vary. So most of that has faded through most of American history. Now every court has the same combined powers. But historically, it comes from that origin. And if you understand it from that concept, then think of it as is this something that could appeal to the king's conscience as fundamentally unjust? And that's where these principles originate and arise.
I like that. Appealing to the king's conscience being the courts. In Quebec, I mean, there are, I think the 3 criteria are enrichment, correlative impoverishment, and the absence of a judicial contract or any, explanation as to why. And for everybody saying, if you don't like YouTube, just leave, go to BitChute. Just so everybody appreciates, BitChute is not monetized for content creators. So it's nice to say, go do stuff for free and don't make money doing it, because everybody needs to make money. There's nothing dirty about that. Rumble thus far is proving to be the most viable YouTube competitor. BitChute is just good for backing stuff up in case it gets taken down. But all right, we'll see, because I tell you, those new terms of service are in your face. They're in your face in terms of what they're saying. Like it's thumbing your nose that we can do whatever we want. We can make money off of you, even if you don't get your share of it, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think something's going to happen. And I mean something judicial. It's going to go to court, because I tell you, there are people I know lawyers in Canada who would love to take something like this to court, and we've got no shortage of lawyers in the U.S. who want to do it. So,
and there is no Section 230 in Canada. Now they'll dispute jurisdiction on grounds that all the contracts require suing in particular suing in California.
This is the jurisdictional issue is something we would have to discuss by Canadian law, but